Hello, all, and welcome back to the Oracle Parlor podcast. Come step into the parlor, grab your cup of tea, get nice and cozy because we have a special guest here in the parlor today. If you couldn't see, if you're watching the video, I have this lovely pink-haired magical medium with me. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi. First of all, Jenny, thank you so much for having me. I'm always thrilled to have conversations with you. And
Aw.
like we've said a million times, we could just talk for hours and hours and have. So,
Yes.
um, my name is Mandy Wilde. I'm known as the Wild Medium. I am a medium, if you can't guess that by my name, astrologer and educator of the divine feminine. I also serve as a high priestess of Inomine Akate, which is a coven dedicated to Akate. And once a month, I open that up to the public for a communal dipnon and protection petition. So I like providing different services for the community and in the service of my primary goddess, Akate.
I love that. And oh my gosh, like I've already said to Mandy off mic, so I'll say it here, but I definitely am going to have Mandy on more episodes because not only could we talk about a lot about mediumship, but I also would love to hear about your experiences with Hecate, and I'm sure a lot of people would as well. And so this is only the beginning, my friends. This is only the beginning. But today, I thought it would be really cool to have a chat about mediumship with someone else who practices mediumship because it's one thing to hear it from one person like all the time on the podcast, but it's really cool to get somebody else's perspective. And so that is why we are here today. And I want to get started with asking you, when did you realize that you could sense spirits?
So that's a really good question. And I know this varies for everyone who does practice mediumship. For me, it started very, very young. The very first, and I know you've heard this story before, the very first time I realized I was seeing a spirit, I was around, I think around 5 years old, 5, 6 years old. Um, and it was in one of my childhood homes, and I grew up very, very religiously, like very religiously.
Mm.
It was United Pentecostal. We were not allowed in the particular church we went to have a tree. And so my parents, for the first time when I was around like 5 years old, they decided to get a tree unbeknownst to their church. Um, and I remember my mom and dad putting up there like, look, you can't sneak out of your bed at night and just go and like stare at this. Like you need to stay in your bed throughout the nighttime. I was like, oh, okay. I suppose I had an issue with getting out of bed in the middle of the night. Still the case. But I remember going to bed and then waking up to go to the bathroom and then sneaking into the living room. And that was when I recall seeing my very first spirit.
And this was at
Didn't know that at
Christmas
the
time?
time. It was around Christmas time, and in front of the tree, I
Mm.
saw this man, and he was he it was kind of a form of a man. There wasn't a whole lot of detail,
Mm.
but I remember staring at him and waving, and I just like saw his face kind of turn toward me and then turn back, and then he just stayed, and I was like, wow. So this is what everyone's talking about. You put up a tree and Santa Claus comes. So I ran and I jumped on my parents' bed and I was like, Mommy, Daddy, Santa Claus is in the living room. And my dad's like, what are you talking? I'm like, there's the man, it must be Santa Claus. He's in the living room. And he comes out with like his baseball bat and he's looking around. He's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, he's right there. And that kind of set everything in motion. I got lots of talks too. And my mom was really upset about me seeing something that wasn't there. Um, so I learned really early on to kind of keep what I was seeing, the frequency of what I was seeing, like to myself. But sometimes it was really hard.
Yeah.
And, you know, I would see what I have now been known or now have been shown to know that was my great grandmother who would be standing next to my mother while she would be making tea. And I would be like, oh, she makes it like you do.
Mm.
Because in the South, sometimes you put a little baking soda in your iced tea to keep the tannins at bay. I
Oh,
know, a
that's
little
cool. I
trick,
didn't know
right?
that.
I know. And I remember watching my mom make tea and seeing this older woman kind of do similar motions and describing her to my mom. And yeah, it didn't go very well in my household. But
Mm.
those were early moments of seeing past spirits, like entities that had lived here previously. And then um, the first time I saw spiritual entities that were not past loved ones
Hmm.
was probably around, I want to say 10 or so. And my sister and I would be spending the night at my aunt's house, whose husband was a minister, and she would pray to us, like pray for angels to come and protect us at night. And I would start screaming like, no, 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 because I could see these things rushing in that didn't look like they were very intense. It was very bright. And it was super palpable and didn't feel all that amazing. And they would rush in and I would like scream, no, 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 stop putting them at the edge of the bed. Like, don't say that. And then of course that was a whole thing. So very early on did I start seeing spirits, but also early on knowing that I should keep my mouth shut
Hmm. That
when
happens a
that would
lot.
happen.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And did you realize, like, at first you thought it was Santa. At what point did you realize, oh, wait, this is a different person who has passed? This is something else. Was it like a slow progression as people talked to you, or?
It was a slow progression, and I don't think I ever not believed that was not Santa for a long, long time
Yeah,
because I
yeah.
was telling people I saw Santa. Santa came to my house. Like, did he leave presents? No, but I saw him. He's there every night, and he continued to be there even after we removed the tree. He would just kind of hang out in the living room, and I referred to
Mm,
him as Santa, and I referred to him as Santa for years and years and years. Um,
amazing.
so that was my first. I feel like I believe in Santa. I saw him. He
Heck
wasn't wearing
yeah.
a red coat. So,
I
but
love that though, because like I really do honestly believe that sometimes all we need to access those innate abilities that everybody has is to have that belief in magic. And so I find it
Mhm.
interesting that in your household, you weren't allowed to have that bit of magic during the holiday season until this happened. And it's almost like this magical door opened for you at the same time because this belief in magic was like there. Does that make sense?
Oh, 1,000%. And I hadn't thought about it like that. But yeah, there was this element of mystery and like this like magical Christmas experience that I
Yeah.
didn't have up until like this time. Like all of a sudden, this lit up gorgeous tree. It was gorgeous. They're all gorgeous to me.
Yeah.
They've got lights on it. But yeah, it kind of spawned that. That just spawned that. I have other theories too that might be a little bit too dark for today, but we
Again,
we can
another episode. Like
another episode.
I would love to have you on just for like a whole spooky story episode where we can share our experiences as well as what we think they may have been and like dissect that. That would be so cool. So,
Yes, yes, yes.
so
All
now
the
my
things.
question is, it kind of sounds like especially with that story that you were sharing about like somebody praying for angels and these really intense entities. And for anyone who has not worked with angels, they are extremely intense beings, very, very intense. So as a child who's highly sensitive and could sense and see those things, that must have been like a real punch in the gut. So my question is, were you afraid of spirits when you were younger? Was that something that frightened you?
Yes and no. Yes,
Mm,
for certain ones. And I was scared of the angels that would come forward. And I, a lot of times in my current practice, I have people wanting to connect with angels. It's not something I regularly do because it
mm,
does require a lot of energy to facilitate on my end. And
Hmm.
I'm not necessarily a fan of the way it feels.
Hmm.
I think it inhibits other spirits that are coming through and that want to come through. And I think probably something happening here too. But like just like for your listeners, like mediumship is the practice of like communicating with spirits or entities from the afterlife, and it's, you know, facilitated by mediums like ourselves, right, who act as a channel for these messages. And as mediums receive messages from like past loved ones or deceased individuals or angels or guides or other
Hmm.
spiritual beings, like we get them through like various means like visions or auditory messages or physical sensations or just knowing. um
Yes.
but for us, like the form of communication is often, from my client's perspective, I feel like I can say, is like, is it's often sought for closure or for guidance or
Hmm.
insight. And so like my primary client is seeking closure from like a past loved one. Now, that being said, like we all have like a team of spirit guides, and that includes angels, and that includes, you know, other entities as well. But the what am I trying to say here? It's like my primary focus, I feel like, as a medium is to connect the client with their past loved one. Um,
Yeah.
so the idea of like reading like angelic messages and bringing those forward sometimes kind of usurp, it starts to usurp that
Hmm.
intimacy that can that is usually brought forward by a past loved one. So
Yes, definitely. And I want to definitely clarify for anybody who does do angelic readings, there's nothing wrong with that. But
nothing wrong with it.
yes, but every medium, every spiritual practitioner, every practitioner, whether or not they're spiritual, has their own flavor and their own vibe of doing things. And so some people vibe more with certain types of entities over others. Like, for example, I don't actually do like a lot of deity communication. It's just not something in my practice. It's not something that's part of my cultural backgrounds. And it's never really vibed with me. And so you get people who do like, oh, let me do a deity reading for you. Let me connect you in with your deity and what they want to say. For me, that's not my vibe. So I wouldn't offer that because I'm not experienced in it and it doesn't resonate. And it's not something that I connect easily in with. And for you, it sounds like angels is a similar sort of thing where it's just like, not the vibe, hard to connect in, not, and if you do, it's like it muddies the other connections. So like totally valid. And that's something I really want to bring attention to in this moment. So thank you for opening that door and for explaining what mediumship is for you. But if something doesn't resonate with you, listener, you don't have to do it. So not every medium will fill every niche for every person.
A
And that's
thousand
totally
percent.
valid.
We're so different, and that's why
Yes.
as a medium, I go to other mediums who have that are specializing in certain types of channeling that I don't
Yes.
partake in myself. So I would go and get like an angelic reading from someone else. I don't like to do it myself.
Yeah.
I do deity like readings. I channel like from deity, and I work really
Yes.
closely with that deity. But angels are just not my thing. But like I said, there's no shade in it because I go
Yep.
to others
Yes.
for those readings.
Yes, exactly. Same.
Like I
I've
would go
always,
to you also for like a pet mediumship reading. You know, I can
it's my
do
favorite.
that, but it's not my specialty. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
you would go to, it's the same like when you go to get your hair done or something. Maybe you have a colorist and a cut someone who cuts your hair that's totally a
Exactly.
stylist who's totally separate because they can do both, but they focus on the one thing.
Absolutely. And there is an episode, I don't know if it's going to be out before or after this one, where I am going to talk about, or have talked about, depending, on like red and green flags with psychics and practitioners. And my red flag that I do warn people of is anybody who claims they can do anything and do it exceptional. I am very wary of because
Agreed.
I would never claim to be able to connect you in with your deities because it's not something that resonates with me. It's not something I practice. Versus, like you pointed out, pet communication. I love pet communication. I've been doing it for, oh my gosh, a couple years now, and it's my favorite thing to do. And yeah, sometimes like people asking me, hey, do you practice this? And maybe I do it privately, but not publicly. And maybe that opens the door for me to continue to learn and practice and hone that skill until I'm able to say, yes, I offer this. Yes, I've been doing this for a long time. But if somebody comes to me and wants like deity work, that is not something I'm going to be like, yes, I can do it and I can do it exceptionally well. I will actually tell people if they ask me something like that, I will tell them that is not something I practice in. If you want me to tap into that, I won't charge you for the reading because it's something I want to try. But if it's not even something I want to try, I will absolutely be like, go to this person. They're well versed in this. Go to that person. Look at this. And I feel like that's definitely important. But
It is
anyways, yeah.
all
Oh,
of
go
this,
ahead.
like it just expends so much energy on like our parts as mediums anyway. And so
Yes.
it's like we don't if you we don't feel comfortable in expending, this mass amount of energy towards something that we're not super uh I guess aligned with on
Hmm.
our own parts. It's like it like takes away from the other aspects of it.
Yes.
Um, yeah.
Like you can
But
definitely, as a practitioner, have like multiple avenues of like practice. Like I love all different
yeah.
forms of divination, but it's the like I can do everything and I can do it perfectly. I'm like,
No, I know. I know.
pump the
I
brakes.
have a lot of fingers in a lot of different divinatory pies, but
Yes.
there's only a select few that I'm like, I do
Master
deity
of.
reading,
Yes.
I do
Yes.
mediumship, I can do
Exactly.
like these are the things I do, and the rest I go to other people.
Yes, exactly. I love that. So it's interesting when we hear professional mediums say, yeah, I used to be afraid of spirits. So now the question is, where did that shift happen? And at what point were you saying, you know what? I am going to pursue mediumship? Because for me, I have my own story, but I would love for you to share how you shifted from fear to like curiosity and exploration to now you're a professional medium.
Yeah, so I think the fear actually came from um, feeling like I had to be quiet about it, and that as a preteen and a teenager in my teenage years really started to cause a lot of anxiety, and I started to develop like panic attacks, and they were coming on strong, and it was because I was coming into my own. And let me tell you, as children we are very sensitive to the spirit world. As preteens and teenagers we are as well.
Oh,
We're in
yes.
such a liminal states that we're like wide open to that realm, and
Mm.
they were starting to come in much more clearly for me. I was noticing like the different clairs that I was being able to experience, and that part I had no one to talk to about it
Mm.
at the time. And so that to me, I think was the scariest part, not necessarily being afraid of the spirit, because I've not been shown anything that I need to be afraid of. The only things that have caused like uh fear would be like I was saying as a child, and angels coming in like very quickly. And I think it was more the energy that was just like super intense. It When I started to, I think, come into my own as a medium, it was later in life when I was, it becomes like this kind of like when you're in your like college years, even like, wait, you can see, do me, do me, do me. And you're like, oh, okay, okay. And then I'm doing this all the time.
Mm.
And I've got this other career, going into my adulthood. I've got this whole other career that I'm still able to do mediumship for people, but not professionally until when um, the lockdown happened and a lot of us lost our current careers.
Mm.
I was a sommelier, a wine director for a really massive wine program here in Los Angeles. And all of a sudden, restaurants aren't doing anything and we're closed
Yep.
down and like what's going on? So I started helping out people around me as far as mediumship goes. And then at one point I was like, why am I not doing this full time? Because it felt so good
Mm.
and it felt so satisfying. I was more exhausted from that, but in a good way. It just like to be of service to someone
Yeah.
feels so rewarding. And to have someone come to you and be like, thank you so much for the closure. Like, thank you so much for the message. Like that was exactly what I needed to hear. The like tying messages in with what they've been getting, or uh, even just like, yes, that is your grandmother, and I see her. This is what she looks like, and then like, oh my gosh, it felt so rewarding. And that was when I decided to completely go all in
Mm.
and take the leap. Now, though I've been seeing and communicating with spirits since I was like 5, 6 years old, I did want to get a certification because in this
Yeah.
day and age, people want to see that. And
Yeah.
so I did go through a program, um, which was, it was great. I was able to get my feet wet with doing a ton of like like I don't even know how to call like cold call readings,
Mm.
where
Yeah.
they're like 20-minute like mediumship readings, like, and you would do like 10 a day, which is a lot, by the way,
Yeah.
and you know this, but too
Yeah.
much. But
That's
like you do
that.
like 10 a day, yeah, and it was just like over and over and over.
Mm.
So I was able to kind of get my feet wet with different types of what would soon to be clients. And yeah, and then I just kind of grew my business from that.
That's amazing. It's so
Yeah.
cool to hear your story of how you got into mediumship, because how you got into mediumship is very much like how I got into tarot, where it was like I've been doing tarot since I was a kid. It never left my life, and at a certain point when people found out that like I was really getting back into it in like end of college as I got into my career in animation. And when people found out that I was doing it and practicing it, they're like, "Oh, can you read me? Can you read me? Can you read me?" And then it turned into, "I'll give you lunch if you give me a reading." And then it just
Yes.
kind of progressed to being like, "Okay, well, I'll just make this like a side hustle," until it became my full gig. So it's really cool to hear that mediumship was that for you, because that was tarot for me. Um, but for me, how I got into mediumship, it's really interesting because, like, I've also had a lot of experiences with spirits and entities all my life, but it scared me so, 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 so deeply that I shut down a lot of my clairs, a lot of my psychic abilities, because it was just, also coming from a religious background, for me, Catholic, it was seen as like demonic and
Hmm.
very bad and something that you don't want to get into. Plus, with a lot of pop culture and media perpetuating these ideas of ghosts and demons and yada yada, it was very scary for me. And so when I reclaimed the title of witch and I started to really dive back into opening up my abilities, something that kept coming up in my meditations with my spirit team was connecting in with people who have passed and entities and opening that door again. And I was kind of hesitant about it, but Spirit was sending me so many messages that I could not refuse. Like, it would randomly, like, and this wasn't even algorithm based. This was like someone would be talking to me about a paranormal show completely unprovoked. They'd be like, "Oh, there's this medium," or "Oh, there's this like paranormal show where da da da." And I was like, "Okay, this is really weird because I've been getting a lot of messages from Spirit like that I should get into this." And I was like, "You know what? All right, fine. I'm curious. I want to be more curious than fearful, so I'll give it a shot." And so I took my first ever mediumship class with someone from LA, and I'm blanking on their name right now, but for listeners, I always put references and reference links in my episodes whenever I possibly can, because it's very important to share my education and my resources with people. I think information is extremely important to share. So the link to my teachers will be there, but I took I believe it was like a 6 to 8 week course on mediumship, just basic introduction. And I remember thinking, I'm not a medium. I'm not a medium. Just because I can, see spirits out of the corner of my eyes and have weird experiences with different entities, that doesn't make me a medium. And then I took this class and I was like, I think I'm a medium. I immediately fell in love with it. It gave me so much courage and it gave me my power back. Instead of giving it to fear, I learned to, like, I'm definitely, as a witch and as a medium, I'm definitely in control of the situation and I can, say no, I can have boundaries. And so I went on to take an advanced mediumship course with Squamish Medium for anybody who knows who that
I love
is.
her.
Yes. And that even pushed me to the next level. And it's funny because, like, I don't really offer mediumship as one of the main things that I do, but it was almost like spirit was pushing me in that direction, that my spirit team, the universe, whatever you want to call it, was pushing me in the direction of you really need to learn mediumship so I could overcome my fear of having encounters with spirits. So when I was receiving things, I could be like, oh, okay, who is this? What's going on? I can dive into it. And I mean, even with tarot readings, one of the signs that I got that spirit was like, you really need to do this was I had done a reading for somebody, and this was before I took any classes or anything. And during my reading with this person, for the first time ever, a spirit came through the session, my tarot reading, and I saw their face super clearly. I knew who they were. And so I told this person feels like a father figure, but they weren't really your father. They are looking like they're like late to mid 40s. They look like this. And the woman started crying. This was like my friend's mom, and I didn't know anything about her. And she started crying and she opened up a photo on her phone and she said, "Is this him? This is my uncle." And it was him. And I was like, wait, hold on, what?
You know, that's really interesting. I'm so happy you brought this up and like because your tarot cards opened up this this extra channel through mediumship as well.
Mhm.
Like you said early on, like we all have mediumship abilities. We all
Yes.
have different varying degrees of mediumship, right?
Yes.
But we all have the ability to be mediums. And one of the things that can like help someone grow this would be using a divinatory
Mm,
tool like tarot,
yes.
especially if like if people are like, well, I don't see anything or I don't hear anything. You know what? Pull out your cards because these are really great ways to help focus your intention and focus like
Exactly.
your energy. So so I will use tarot when I'm doing certain mediumship readings when I feel like I am being bombarded by
Yes.
more than like three spirits at a time. If I've got like three, four spirits, I can kind of naturally keep them like behind a rope, right? And let them in one at a time. Beyond that, it gets really confusing for me. And so I'll be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I tell my
Yeah.
guides, whoa, whoa, whoa. I need to bring in like some help here. And then I'll put my cards down and I will ask for them to show me what spirit I'm speaking to first, and I keep them in line that way. And then I start to read my tarot cards, not like a tarot deck, right? And because I read tarot as well, but
Yep.
like when I've got them
Yes.
and I'm doing it in this, I'll be like, okay, and then it can help me um focus on certain activations within the body of the spirit of the past loved one or the spirit. Um, but yeah, tarot is like a divinatory tool for me is like huge. I love I
Yes.
love holding cards and I love all the different art and I love how each
Yes.
one has a different personality, right?
Yes.
Like you can just I have my few that I use more than others, but you know, I don't know, I've got like seven or eight like and I know that's nothing to people who reach for they're like, I've got 50 bucks in this row. I'm like,
Not me like shying away here, being like, I definitely have like 20 decks on my shelf.
I'm sure and they all have their own like personality, right? Like they all have,
Yes.
you know, when when you're being called to one. And speaking of tarot, for those who are interested in reading tarot, but feel like they've opened up a deck and they're like, I'm not getting anything from it. That's okay. That's okay. Put it away for a while, get a different deck. That deck, though, don't get rid of it because they come and go, right? Like I had a
Yeah.
deck that I used from the time I was like 15 years old till maybe 30. And then it shut up and it just like, I don't know if it was because of where I moved in life or what it was going on, but it just stopped talking to me completely. I couldn't connect with it. And I set it to the side. I started using like a different deck, whatever, and that was fine. And when I moved to LA, I remember opening up this box and I was like, it was my Marseille deck. And I was like,
Mm.
you know what? I'm just gonna pop you open. I know you haven't talked to me in a minute. I know we haven't like aligned. And then it was just like, oh, and now it's my primary deck again.
Of
Like,
course. Yeah.
okay. It just needed some time, or maybe, it just wasn't aligning where I was.
Yeah, at that
God, that
stage in
could
your life.
we could talk about that in like astrocartography, if
Oh my
that is
gosh.
even connected.
Yes, no, for real. Like,
So
oh,
many
oh,
things.
when you were talking about like how tarot has personality, I'm like, wait, wait, wait. Yes, yes, yes. Different episode, absolutely. But I do want to go back to how you brought in this very, very good point that I think is very important for anybody who is new or still learning, or maybe you've been practicing for a while. There is definitely this I feel like misinformation and it's definitely feels like a negative belief that if you are psychic, intuitive, a psychic reader of any kind, whether that's mediumship, energy reading, pet communication, one of the misconceptions I feel like is that you're not allowed to use divination tools, that you're supposed to be able to do it completely like freehand, alone by yourself. And I can tell you right now that some of the best psychics out there will always have some sort of divination tool at the ready for exactly like what you were talking about, Mandy, where it's like, okay, I'm getting a lot of things at once. I'm getting a lot of conflicting things, or maybe there's multiple spirits that are kind of blending together and I need to separate this out, or I'm getting a flash of something, but it's not coming in super clear. So, having those divination tools, whether it's a pendulum or tarot cards or an oracle deck, or, I forget the word for like just item throwing, but there's also bone throwing, but anything to just be like, oh, okay, now I have that extra bit of information. It's
Yeah.
not cheating, it's not wrong, it's a natural
No,
part of the process.
it's totally, it's kind of like another one actually that I use sometimes too is automatic writing. Um, the
Mm,
when one is starting out and you're wanting to develop any sort of like mediumship skills in particular, like psychic skills, like you're saying, like a pendulum,
yeah.
like the tarot, but automatic writing is really fantastic to help bring forth messages that maybe you're having a hard time like hearing or seeing, or
Hmm.
just start to write. And I always tell people, don't give up if like the first couple of things you're writing looks like gibberish and
Yeah.
looks like, and
Yeah.
don't be surprised if your handwriting looks different too, because that's normal. But if it looks like something like I like ice cream or whatever, just what a lot of times what is happening is that the spirit, it takes a lot of energy on their part too to communicate with us in the physical form, right? It's them and us, like this calibration of that
Yes.
communication. So just like write some things out, write some things, and then all of a sudden you'll notice that you're starting to just kind of freeform, right? Um, the biggest piece of advice I can give someone starting out as a medium and to grow their skills is to go off of your first intuition. Because if you let yourself think about it too
Yes.
much, your logical brain is already trying to make it into something that makes sense to the physical world, right? And we're not
Yes.
talking about the physical world, we're talking about the spirit world. So we need to go off our first intuition, our first instinct. And a way to help strengthen that is to do something super simple by trusting your first instinct. And you can do this like, okay, you open up the refrigerator and you're like, what do I want? I am craving strawberries. And you look at the strawberries like, oh wait, but maybe I want, get the strawberries. Start listening to yourself. Like, what is that first thing? Like, I want the strawberries. I'm getting the strawberries. Like, I'm not going to sit here and like look around. Like that, honoring that initial impulse, right? That impulse is going to help strengthen it. If you like, even like choosing like an article of clothing to put on in the morning, if you're
Yes.
like, oh yeah, I know I want to do this, and I'm I do this all the time. We're like, oh, maybe I'll do this already. Like I knew what I wanted to put on, and now I'm going to be 10 minutes late to where I'm going to go because I'm thinking too hard on it. But these simple things can help strengthen one's psychic and intuitive abilities. Just those little simple things, you know?
Yes, absolutely. I'm actually working on something right now. I'm not going to talk about it too much, but this is like the whole project that I'm working on. I have so many thoughts and ideas about it that I had to put it into a whole huge project. But it's so funny that you mentioned the whole like, oh, what do I feel like wearing today? And you already had an outfit in your head and you go with that gut initial, like literally my outfit today was an instance of that. So the fact that you brought that up, I think is amazing because here's the thing. Every single time I have honored that intuitive, this is what I'm wearing today. Even though I haven't thought about it, my brain will like clairvoyantly just show me this is the
Yeah.
outfit of the day. Even if I don't feel like wearing it, every single time I have followed that initial clairvoyant image of this is what I'm wearing today, it always plays a key point in the day, whether somebody comes up to my table to compliment my outfit and then suddenly they're asking me about my readings. Or like this, where I was like, I didn't feel like wearing this sweater today, but then you mentioned the whole outfit thing, and I was like, well, obviously, like it was meant to be. So, like, 1,000%. Like, those are like finding the mundane intuition, intuitive moments, intuitive pings, as I like to call them, and following them. So
Yes.
yes, and it's funny because we were talking about like common misconceptions, which is how we kind of got started on this. So before we move on to, it's funny because I have a Patreon question. Somebody had asked like what you would recommend for people who are starting out. So I think we definitely hit that one. But before we move on to the rest of the Patreon question, I do want to ask, is there a common misconception about mediumship that you do want to clear the air on, or is there perhaps something you wished people understood about mediumship?
Yes, we are not going to be given the day you're going to die. And I get asked that all the time. We are not privy to that information, and no one should be privy to that information. We are given,
Yes.
free will. So, I bless her heart. My Pilates teacher will not touch me and correct me because she thinks that if
Oh,
she touches me, I'm going to be able to tell her when she's going
no.
to
Hmm.
pass.
Hmm.
I'm like, it's not that scary. Oh my gosh. It's love. It is,
Yes.
it's clarity. It is insight. It is
Yes.
guidance. It is closure. It is healing. It's those things. We are not meant to come on this planet like, and this is happening. That no, no, no. That's not what we do.
Yes.
That is not what I do. Um, so yeah, I think that's a common misconception that it's going to be super scary, that you're going to get some
Yeah.
like tragic news like that. If something is pressing as far as like health goes, I may be given information like I'm being told that, there's something some sort of like activation in like let's say your reproductive system and like you typically I'll get like a call or a text or an email a couple of
Hmm.
weeks later or a month later like I'm pregnant, like that sort of thing. Like I get stuff like that.
Hmm.
I don't get like you need to be wary, blah blah blah. Now I use astrology to do like auspicious dates and things like that because we can look at our transits and like kind of I'll use like mediumship and then like use like people's transits to be like, well, you might want
Yes.
to walk carefully, but we're
Yeah.
not given that kind of like scary information. No, these are like you people typically leave feeling fulfilled
Yes.
and
Yes.
held and supported and seen and heard and loved and all the things. So I think that's like
Absolutely.
I get that one a lot. I get that one like,
I do too.
no,
And like, not even for mediumship. I get that with tarot. I get that with palmistry. I get
yeah,
that everything. Like, one of the things I hear the most as somebody who works at a lot of events and at cafes and shops, some people have told me just straight up that they will not get a reading with me because they are afraid to know when they're going to die. Some people will
I get
sit
that.
down.
Yeah.
Yep. Some people will sit down and be like, yeah, I'm excited to get the reading. I just don't tell me when I'm gonna die, or don't tell me. And I'm like, oh, honey, no. And then here's the thing. I strongly believe, even if for whatever reason, the universe, the higher self of the person I'm reading for, whomever, whatever, wherever it's coming from, even if I were to receive that information, why on earth would I tell them that just flat out? It's unethical. It really is
Yeah.
unethical. Because
Yeah,
then what you're doing is you're putting so much anxiety and pressure and fear on this person. And then the I also believe that when it comes to predictions and fortune telling, I don't like calling it fortune telling because the future is changeable depending on your actions and the
yes.
actions of the world around you that you can't control. And so if we were to say this thing, we could be doing a lot of undue stress and damage to this person. And one of the teachers I've had who I believe they were a medium, they definitely picked up on somebody's they were going to pass in a few months, a relative of theirs, like not the person they were reading for, but like
Yeah.
their mom or someone was about to pass. Instead of saying your mom's gonna die in a few months, they said, you know, I'm being guided to say you should really spend a lot of like quality time with your mom. I would definitely do things that you really enjoyed as a kid, like reconnect and spend some quality time and blah blah blah. They did that, and then months later they called and said, "Thank you so much for giving me that guidance to spend time with my mom because she passed." And this person was sitting here, the reader was like, on the quiet to themselves, being like, yeah, I knew they were going to pass, but they didn't deliver it in a stressful way. They delivered it in a way of like, here's what you can do without the heavy bit.
Bedside manner, right?
Exactly.
Like,
It's so
like
important.
bedside manner.
Absolutely.
There's also there's also a common misconception that psychics are mediums as well. And I think this one
Yes.
we hear a lot, but psychics, if someone is psychic, they are not a medium. If you are a medium, you are psychic because of the types of energy that it's like that's displayed. So like, it's kind of like that phrase, like not all to wait, not all. What's the mezcal tequila one? I don't know. There's a saying with that too, like not all
Yeah,
mezcal is
yeah,
tequila, but all tequila is mezcal, or no, guys, it's vice versa. But
yeah.
like psychics, the thing with like it's important to note that like while all mediums are psychic because they use
Yes.
the intuitive abilities to connect with the spirit world, not all psychics are mediums because psychics may not have the specific ability to communicate with spirits because their abilities lie more about reading energies and offering insight without necessarily linking it to the deceased, and like while mediums will often rely on psychic abilities that they have as a unique set of skills to center around like spirit communication. Um, yeah, I get that a lot too. Like, oh, are you? That's why a lot of you see like it's psychic medium because
Yes.
I usually just kind of drop the psychic part because it's kind of just it's known,
Yes.
but it's also I rely more heavily on my mediumship than like the psychic aspect, which I do. I have done psychic work for like detectives and stuff, locating people who are still
Amazing.
around,
Yes. Yes. And
but
that
totally different skills.
I love that you brought that up because that is important to note. It's like an umbrella term. It's like witch, right?
Yeah.
Not every witch is a divination person. Not every witch is spiritual or religious. Not every, it's an umbrella. So like psychic is like, yeah, okay, so like divination falls under psychic, mediumship falls under psychic, but that doesn't mean that all psychics will say that they're a medium because that may not be their energetic forte. And not all mediums may say that they're a psychic because they may not practice in other spaces. Like, I know a lot of mediums from the community that I was a part of who absolutely would not consider themselves psychic because they don't do anything except connect in with spirits. So they're like, oh, well, I don't consider myself psychic because it's like, well, I don't do the energy reading. I don't do this. I don't do that. Just like not all psychics will say they're a pet communicator if that's not something that they've done. But it's all kind of like branches of a tree, if that makes
Yes.
sense. So it's like they're all related, they're all kind of cousins, and they're all kind of like within the realm. But just because one person uses one title doesn't mean that they would use another. So I'm so glad that you brought up that point because that is a very important thing to note. Like a pagan is more religious than a witch would be. And so that's why these
Right.
terms are important, but both pagan and witch are huge umbrella terms. So I can see how people who are just getting into this are probably pretty confused because it's a big gray
It's a
area.
lot.
Yeah, and it's a
It's a lot.
lot. Oh my gosh. So, the last thing that I have here, as I mentioned, is I had an amazing question, a couple of questions come in from Patreon. So, listener, if you don't know already, if you haven't heard on my previous episodes, you can become a Patreon member and you can get access to asking questions for special guests, for my podcast, for the lives that I do. And that's who we had here. We have this amazing question. So, we already kind of went over if there's any like exercises to kind of strengthen our mediumship. We talked about the small mundane things that we can do to tap into intuition. So let me see, because they had a couple of questions here that I think are really great. So, how have your thoughts or theories on ghosts changed based on your own experiences as a medium over time? Have they changed?
My
Because,
thought, how have they
yeah.
changed? Um, I think they've to to be honest, I think they've changed more through my practice as a sorcerer of the Greek magical papyri of the PGM.
Hmm.
Um, I think that would have probably changed it more as far I yeah, if I had to answer it like that. As far as mediumship goes, there are more spirits out there that want to connect than you even realize.
Hmm.
And there are more spirits out there that aren't direct lineage or that you know is direct lineage that want to connect as well for various reasons. I like to say as like a caveat to people that all spirits have an agenda. So it is
Yes.
up to us, you know, as mediums to communicate that, but it is also as up to us as people who do connect on even just as a client to know that you have free will.
Mm.
And no
Yes.
matter what the message is, as a medium, I'm not here to discern the whys, but I'm here to just give you the message. And it's, you know, I always say, like, you have free will, like, whatever this, just because, you know, a, an uncle wants to communicate with you or is coming forward, you can be like, no.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And they're, they are not the same as they were here on Earth. However, we are still human and we still have those particular attachments to maybe those memories. I'm talking about like trauma specifically.
Yes.
Um, and as a medium, I know that these spirits are not the same and as they were here on earth, but you can say no as someone who is getting a reading that you do not want to connect with uh certain certain spirits that come forward. Um,
Yes.
so I think as far as like the mediumship, how it how my how my look on ghosts have changed or spirits have changed, it's that I know now as like a more developed medium that they are definitely not the same as they were here on earth. Um, but that being said, we're human and we still have those attachments. And, it's
Yes.
great that if you've gone through the whole like, I released and I'm good and blah, blah, blah. I'm not. I'm a woman of trauma and my
Yes.
abuser is on the other side and I still refuse to connect to that spirit. So,
Yes, boundaries with spirits. And I
mhm.
am definitely going to be already, the episode will already be out, but I have a whole episode on that as well, because as someone who comes from trauma and my abuser is on the other side, oh my gosh, absolutely you're allowed to have boundaries with spirits, 1,000%. But yeah, I find this question so interesting because, like, for me, um, honestly, my view on ghosts changed quite wildly after I got into mediumship and became a practicing medium because, like I said, they used to scare the crap out of me. And I honestly thought, oh, demonic and evil. And if they're stuck because they were bad or whatever, or they have ill intent. And oh my gosh, not the same at all anymore. Like, I definitely am way more open to when spirits approach me randomly, like when I'm out and about. If they come up to me, I set rules with them and I'm like, hey, we can talk if you're willing to do XYZ things. Again, boundaries. Whereas before it would just scare me so much to see something out of the corner of my eye or get a sudden feeling and just know that there was something there. For example, I used to go to antique stores, and before I was a developed medium, I used to get really freaked out when I would sense something was there and it would make me uncomfortable. And just the other day, I went antique shopping with my sister and I walked into a certain area where I was like, okay, there's definitely a spirit here. And I was like, do I feel like dealing with this right now? No, because I'm here to spend time with my sister. So bye. And then I just excused myself from the situation. Like, my idea has shifted more so, not like, oh, all ghosts are just wanting to be moved on, which we will talk about in a whole different episode because, oh my gosh. But it's more like, oh, sometimes they're just sort of there, and that's not something to be afraid of. And I do want to clarify that I have learned, having worked with so many mediums in community and practicing, not every medium believes in ghosts. Not every
Right.
medium uh is comfortable with ghosts. I met a medium who was terrified of ghosts, but was a medium. And yeah, that one really got me. Essentially, short story here. I was practicing with someone who was just starting to develop their mediumship skills. They had gotten up to get a glass of water. We were on Zoom, and a gentleman walked in to the camera. He made himself very known to me. I saw him clairvoyantly. I was getting information about him, and I thought it was like very interesting that they had a spirit that was cohabiting with this person in their apartment. And when the person came back, I asked them like, "Oh, hey, do you like have experiences in the home? Because there's this gentleman and da 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 da." They just completely flushed, like went completely pale, eyes wide. They were so terrified, and they told me, ghosts really scare me. I can't hear this. And I felt so bad. So, hard lesson learned. Not every medium is cool with ghosts, and that's okay. And some people are
That's cool
still
too. Yeah.
developing. Yeah, yeah, it's some people are still developing, some people don't want to deal with that kind of energy, and that's totally fine. Um, but yeah, it's definitely interesting how, like, our perspectives have definitely shifted from when we were kids, for sure.
Oh yeah. I think like as a teenager, I would let any and everything come in. And I think primarily because I didn't know how to stop it. And
Yes,
then,
same.
as you get older, those boundaries, like you were saying, which are so important, are like
Yes.
come up and you're like, okay, I learned that I don't have to open up communication to every spirit that's coming through. Um, that's why, doing it as my profession is nice because I have office hours. And once those
Yes.
office hours are done, and my apartment has all kinds of activity, but
Yes.
it's they know not to bug me outside of office hours. And sometimes they do, and I have to go back in and do the things. But
Yep.
you can choose when and where, we have free will. We can choose when and where we receive these messages, if you want to choose to even to get those messages.
Absolutely. And that's very
Mhm.
similar to like what I was saying, like when I was a kid, I chose. I actively and consciously chose to turn off everything because I don't even remember what happened. I may have mentioned this in an earlier episode. I don't even remember what caused me to do this, but something happened when I was like a teen that just scared me so badly that I said, I'm done. I don't want to see anything. I don't want to hear anything. I don't want to experience anything. I actively prayed to close it because at
Yeah.
the time I was still like Catholic and religious. So I was like, I don't want to sense anything. And I had to do a lot of work to open that back up. So you are absolutely in control of your abilities if you
1,000%.
know, if you don't feel comfortable, you don't have to do this work. Just because you have the ability doesn't mean now you have to go and become a professional public medium. No, you can choose to not do anything with it. My partner is extremely tapped into spirits and senses them, and he is always the person that I go to be like, "Hey, what do you sense? Hey, do you see anything? Do you feel anything?" And he's usually the person that confirms it, but he does not do anything with it because he chooses not to because he's like, "That's not me. That's not what I want to do." And that's valid.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. For same, my sister has the abilities as well, and she does not do anything with them except for, when we're out and about, she'll be like, "Hey, did you?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's okay," but
Yeah.
doesn't like to talk about it, doesn't like to do anything with
That's
it.
that's the same with my husband. He's the same way. He'll be like, "Hey, do you feel something back there?" And I'm like, "Yep." And he's like, "Okay, cool, we're done." That's all.
And scene.
Yes, exactly. And then lastly, so I do want to acknowledge we do have an amazing question from Patreon, but I would like to do a whole episode on it. So I'm not going to answer this one, and it's in regards to the paranormal field because I feel like we have a lot of opinions. But what first of all, have you ever visited a haunted location, and what would be your number one most wanted to visit haunted location?
So many. I mean, my apartment is haunted, and the place I lived before this was haunted. I've been to a bunch of haunted places, but where I have not been,
Uh-huh.
and I've always wanted to go, was the Winchester house. I've
Stop.
never been,
Mandy
and
sings.
it's it's here in California.
Yeah.
Like, why have I not been? Maybe that's a field trip.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Just and like maybe that's a little field trip. I've always wanted to go. For a number of reasons. But yeah, and it's just a handful of hours away. So
I can't
that's my bucket.
believe I can't believe that you said exactly what I was gonna, but
Oh,
I
really?
can because like, yeah, no, it's the same for me. I have always,
Synchronicity.
yes, I've always wanted to go to the Winchester Mystery House. I've never gotten to go. Uh, I I know so much about it, and I feel like it would be so cool to visit, but somehow, being a California native who's grown up here my entire life, I've still never gone, and it's wild to
Uh,
me. So maybe we will have to do a field trip.
we might have to do that. We might have to do that.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I
Girls
can't believe
trip.
you said it. I can't believe you said it. That's so cool.
Girls weekend. Oh my gosh. You
Yes,
totally just do a whole like thing there.
absolutely. Oh my gosh, amazing. I've been to some other haunted locations. Like I know some people may know Jerome, Arizona. I don't know if you know Jerome, but it's a small mining town. Have you heard of it?
Oh yeah, I've heard of it,
Okay.
but I haven't been there. Uh-uh.
I love it. It's so kitschy and small and like ghost town. And I love like old miner towns because I grew up in Sacramento. If for anybody who doesn't know, Sacramento is very much like old miner town, Western, like creepy ghost place. So uh, I've gone to Jerome, and Jerome has a famous hotel at the top of the town that I believe it used to be a ward for TB. And then after that, it turned into a mental health hospital, which we all know how those were. And then it became what it is now, which is a hotel. And so, and I may have that incorrect. I have to check. But I have been there, and that was a pretty wild experience. So, but Winchester Mystery House, that's the one I've been wanting to go to.
I definitely want to go to that. I love mining, like old mining towns. This is where was it? In Solvang. I stayed at a hotel that was I did not expect to be haunted because I hadn't been to Solvang prior to this was many I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I hadn't been there at that point and
Mm.
went with a friend of mine, and I was anticipating coming straight back, but it got late, and then I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna stay here. And she was like, stay with me. I got a room at this place. Like, okay, I didn't know anything going into like Solvang other than it's cute and like Danish looking. And we
Yeah.
went, that was the most uncomfortable evening I have ever spent in a hotel room. I was just like not super prepared for it because
Mm.
I hadn't done it. I just went in and I was like the second we walked in, I remember thinking, why is there's a okay, so there's a spirit standing at the corner over there, and he does not look like he's gonna budge, like no matter what I do in here. So, respect, it's his place, like, but I'm gonna sleep here. And came back later that night and and it was just like walking on the bed, coming up to my throat, doing the things. Yeah. Mm-mm. But isn't like solving like an old, isn't there like the gold miners or something?
I don't
Isn't that
know.
around there? I don't know.
I know of solving, but I don't know its history, so that's really interesting. And it's also really interesting because I've had a similar experience where I went somewhere, I went to Joshua Tree, I stayed at an Airbnb with my partner, did not expect it to be as terrifyingly haunted as it was. And that is a story for another episode because oh my gosh. But yes, I've had a similar experience and it's frustrating
It's
when
like
you're like, I'm on vacation. No, like I
I'm
don't
on
want to deal
vacation. I'm
with
trying to
this. Like, come
relax.
on,
And
yeah.
it's like the ghost itself isn't scary, but
Yeah.
when and this of course can be for totally different, but like when the ghost crosses physical boundaries and
Yes.
is like, that becomes like a hard intervention
Yeah, no.
thing.
Exactly.
No.
No touching. No. Yeah. And that's the other thing. Everybody has their own like set of rules. Like there are definitely some people who are like, "Oh, yeah, I like, when I can feel it, so that's okay if you touch me." And some people are like, "I don't like, seeing. I don't want to see anything." For me, it's hearing. I have a thing with
Yeah.
hearing. Like I'm very clairaudient, but if I hear it with my physical ears, that's a big no for me. Like I don't because just too many experiences when I was
Yeah.
younger, and I'm just like, nah, this is the one that I still can't do. A
Yeah.
poke on the shoulder, fine, but saying my name in another room, not cool.
No, that and good for you for having those boundaries and like
Thanks.
and for your listeners, when you start to develop these things, you might find that you're okay with certain clairs, but not okay with
Yes.
others. And you can make that known and you can make it vocal and just be
Yes.
firm on it. Or you might be like, why am I only getting this one clair? Well, that's a lot. That's cool too, Claire, Claire audience or Claire, like, whatever it's going to be sentient, whatever it is, it's a gift,
Yes.
and it doesn't have to be the whole gambit of clairs. It can be just the one, but
Yes.
we all have like mediumship abilities.
Absolutely. And you can always put like certain parameters on it. Like because I'm so clairaudient, I've put the parameters on where it's like, okay, I'm clairaudient, so I'm okay with these things, but I'm not okay with these things. So
Oh,
I
good point.
filter. Yes. So you can definitely
Good
like
point.
filter out how you receive things, when you receive things. Again, boundaries, 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 boundaries. So important. So, oh my gosh, Mandy, I know we could talk for hours and hours, and this is why you're definitely going to be on another episode for sure. I'm sure of it. This has been so much fun. Oh my gosh.
Thank you. Uh, can is it okay if I plug a
I was
class that's
just
coming
about to
up?
ask what's coming
Because
up? What are you up to? Where can people find you? Share with the parlor.
thank you. It's in particular because one of the classes I have coming up has to do with your podcast name. It's Oracular. So right now, I am currently working on a book, but all I can say about that right now is it will lead you to Azostos. But more on that. That's a journey I'm excited for it to come out
Amazing.
in the next like handful of months. But I have two upcoming classes. And one, the first one I'm going to be teaching is Oracular Mediumship, and it's on the new Miskatonic Books courses platform. You might they have like a beautiful pedigree of offerings of some of the best like occult literature out there, and they have a new platform for courses. So that launches on June 1st, and it will be a continued course that is offered on that. It's 8 weeks, and it's a kind of a fresh approach by using foundations of mediumship to explore the practices of ancient oracles. So instead of just focusing on like
So
traditional
cool.
mediumship, thank you, thank you. Instead of focusing on like traditional mediumship, we'll learn how to connect to the divine using oracular techniques, and dive into like strengthening your ability to connect with the spirit world, receive divine messages, and channel like messages and wisdom to enhance your own spiritual journey and just your overall well-being. So it's just a unique way of using mediumship that we'll be checking out. And then the second is my a virtual class, a virtual workshop at the Salem excuse me,
Yes.
the Witchcraft and Folklore Fest. I think that's like August 19th
Yes.
through the 24th.
Yeah.
But that is going to be a feminist exploration and workshop through Azostos, which is an epithet of Akate that I'm really excited about. And I think it's important to explore these ideas, especially now in this time and age.
Yes.
Um, so those I have coming up. And you can find me, I'm super easy. It's just at Wilde Medium for everything, WILDE Medium. And yeah, wildmedium.com, patreon.com/wildmedium, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all the things, blue sky.
Fantastic. Oh my gosh, your classes sound so amazing. Congratulations on all the amazing stuff that
Thanks.
you have coming out. Like, I'm excited
Thank
to
you.
see everything that you are going to do, everything that you're manifesting. Like, it's absolutely amazing.
Likewise for
Oh,
you,
thank
because
you.
you are look up first of all this podcast. You're meant to be doing this. Meant to be doing this. Yeah. So
Oh, thank you. I'm so
Jenny's a
glad you
gym. Jenny's a gym.
No, you. Oh my gosh, Mandy, thank you so much for saying that. And thank you for coming onto the podcast and sharing your magic, sharing your magical knowledge and your insights, because as an educator and as a practitioner, I feel like it's so important to share what we know with people and also to get many different perspectives from many different people. So I'm so glad you got to be the first, hopefully, of many other folks who can come through and share. So thank you so much for being here today. And to my listeners, thank you for joining in on this special episode. It has been absolutely magical to have you here in the parlor with us. And like always, definitely make sure to leave a review if you haven't yet. Make sure to share. It really helps the podcast. You can find me everywhere as Phantasma Witch. And again, I have a Patreon. So definitely make sure to check Mandy out as well and see you all in the next episode. And see you later in the parlor.